Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom, and today we're talking again about a program on Discovery Channel entitled Outrageous Acts of Psych. Now, this is a hidden camera program, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, but this one goes one step further by adding some psychologists. We've got a team of resident psychologists on this program, and they analyze human behavior and try to make some conclusions about the way we behave. Now, remember last time we were talking about a VIP laundry area in a laundromat.
Yeah.
And I guess they were analyzing the fact that some people actually fall for this. They pay the extra fee to go into that area behind the velvet rope there with the red carpeting, and they get to use special machines and stuff like that. And I guess they think that they're important. They have this perceived elevation of status.
Yeah, it makes you feel good. I went to Paris earlier this year, and when I checked in for my flight on Eva Air, I don't know why, but they gave me a special VIP pass, and I got to go into all the VIP lines, which were really short compared to the other lines, and I felt like a princess all day.
Well, I guess I've had similar circumstances when I actually dress nicely in a nice shirt and wear a tie and stuff like that. People tend to treat you better. I've also noticed here in Taiwan, sometimes you get treated better if you speak only English to people. Sometimes they treat you more with more respect or something because I can speak Chinese, but sometimes if I speak only English, they seem to be more obsequious to me, as if they're like trying to treat the foreigner really extra well. I don't like to do that, you know. It kind of makes me feel like I'm superior or something like that.
Okay, you just used a really big word, obsequious. Can you tell us what that means?
Yeah, I couldn't think of another one. Basically, it just means people are bowing down to you and doing as you say. They recognize you're at a higher level. But I don't like to do that too often. But in certain situations, though, these things can happen, especially if you drive a nice car. Definitely, for sure, people will bend down to you, will bow down to you, or if you dress nicely and stuff like that. So that's why people do this all the time. And if you go to a laundromat, maybe you will be willing to pay the extra fee to go to the VIP area so you can feel really special or something like that. But we'll talk about another example here when somebody kind of analyzes somebody's sausage and tells them that it's too short. Would you believe that? But actually, I think this person or the people being filmed actually believe it. So let's find out what this is all about. Let's read the entire contents of our lesson right now for today, and we'll be right back.
In the 1960s, Stanley Milgram famously showed that under the right circumstances, people have a high tendency to obey authority, even when doing so causes harm to others. We are prone to trust authority figures implicitly, especially when they are wearing uniforms or have certain titles such as expert or detective. In fact, we've been conditioned from a young age to believe that obedience to authority brings us rewards and helps us avoid negative consequences. In one episode of Outrageous Acts of Psych, the producers set out to test if the desire for reward and conflict avoidance still carries weight when a fake food inspector's ridiculous meal assessment gets in the way of someone's dinner. The hidden camera captures the food inspector first asking whether one diner's sausage is long enough. Though taken aback by the question, the woman goes along with the inspector's request to measure the sausage, as she believes him to be in a position of authority. As the inspector's examination of the woman's sausage gets more and more ridiculous, her body language and facial expressions make it clear that she's uncomfortable. Nevertheless, she continues to tolerate the inspector, even when he takes a bite of her sausage, to prove that it tastes short. Although the prank itself is silly, it illustrates the extremes people will go to in order to obey commands in the face of authority. Researchers believe there are several factors for this, one being the unwillingness to cause offense. Another is that we've learned over time to treat commands from authority figures as routine, and therefore we hesitate to question them. For more wacky pranks like these, be sure to check out Outrageous Acts of Psych on Discovery this October.
Okay, everybody, let's talk about today's lesson. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm sure all of you are as well. We're getting candid on outrageous acts of psych. And way back in the 1960s, Stanley Milgram famously showed that under the right circumstances, people have a high tendency to obey authority, even when doing so causes harm to others. And he conducted some kind of experiments that had to do with obeying authority, somebody who was in charge, and seeing if people would obey that person even though they were doing things that went against their conscience. They thought those things were wrong, but hey, if somebody in authority is telling me to do those things, I better do them. So that was his experiment that he conducted back in the 1960s. So he famously showed that under the right circumstances or in the right conditions, people have a high tendency to obey authority. Our tendency, that just means we have the inclination toward doing something. We're likely to do that sort of thing, and we likely obey authority. Authority basically refers to anyone who is in charge. Our teacher, the principal of a school, the boss of the company, the police, maybe even political figures. We obey authority, and we tend to obey authority even when doing so will cause harm to others. I think they're referring to that experiment where the researcher told the person to administer an electric shock to someone, and then that person would scream in pain, and then they would tell them to do it again. But because that person was the scientist telling them to do so, people tended to do it anyway, even though they knew they were causing pain to the person screaming, although the person screaming was just acting.
Right. It's kind of interesting what people will do, either with authority or wanting to obey authority, or even in a group of people, they'll do things that they ordinarily wouldn't do. Authority just refers to people who have power. It could be parents, it could be a teacher, it could be a principal, it could be the police, it could be someone in government in a high position. So authority, people that have the ability to tell you what to do, whoever that might be. And it happens that we want to obey authority even when it's hurting other people. It's kind of strange. We are prone to, that is another phrase that means tendency. We have a tendency to, or we are prone to, trust authority figures implicitly. So we have a tendency to trust people, especially if they have uniforms on. People will go ahead and do what they're told. So especially when they're wearing uniforms, it says right here, or have certain titles, such as expert or detective. Detectives are often people who are part of the police department. Their job is to figure out who committed a crime. So it's interesting how that happens.
Right. If they have a uniform and they have a name tag that says they're an expert or a detective or something, we tend to believe them and we tend to obey them. We do what they tell us to do. In fact, we've been conditioned from a young age to believe that obedience to authority brings us rewards and helps us avoid negative consequences. So yes, we've been taught, a lot of us, not all of us, but most of us have been taught that if we obey authority, hey, we will get something in return and we will avoid negative consequences, which means if you don't obey authority, that means you'll be punished. You probably won't get the cookies after your meal or something like that. You'll be sent to your room or whatever. You won't be allowed to play on your smartphone, etc. So obedience, that's a noun here. That just refers to when you obey someone, which means when you do what someone else tells you to do. And most bosses like obedience in their employees. Do as you're told or you're going to get fired.
Oh, well, if you do obey, sometimes it does bring rewards. And also, this second thing that's really important, it helps us to avoid negative consequences. A consequence is a result of some sort of behavior or action that happened. We're all trying to avoid negative consequences. We would like positive consequences. Consequence is usually referred to as kind of something that happens after something else, but it's usually negative, I have to say. But you want to add an adjective, negative or positive, in front of consequence if it's not clear. But if we talk about the consequences of our actions, it's typically negative. I have to say that, yeah.
True. So, right, if you're afraid of doctors, you might have to face the consequences of getting very sick later on in your life. That's the consequence. That's the result of something you do. And as you said, it's usually something negative. Now, in one episode of Outrageous Acts of Psych, the producers set out to test if the desire for reward and conflict avoidance still carries weight when a fake food inspector's ridiculous meal assessment gets in the way of someone's dinner. Ho, 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 ho. That is a really long sentence, and I'm very sure I lost most of you as I lost myself as I was reading it. So let's break it down into smaller parts and try to explain it here. In one episode of Outrageous Acts of Psych. So if you're watching one episode, this is what happens. The producers set out to test if the desire for reward and conflict avoidance still carries weight when we have this fake food inspector there. So basically, the producers set out to test something. They set out, this is their goal, this is what they try to do. They want to see if the desire for reward and conflict avoidance still carries weight when we have this fake food inspector. So we have this desire for reward. We want to be rewarded, as we talked about last time. We want to see if we still have that reward or that desire for reward, and also if we want to avoid conflict. Conflict avoidance means we try to do whatever we can to avoid trouble. We just don't want conflict. We want things to be as smooth as possible. We don't want to have arguments. We don't want to have fights and things like that. We just want to be we want our lives to go as smoothly as possible. But will that desire still be strong? Will it carry weight? Will we still want to have those things when we have this fake food inspector coming by and giving us this ridiculous meal assessment, and it gets in the way of our dinner? So, yes, we've got this fake food inspector, a food inspector, someone who checks to see if your food is okay, but it's fake. This person is fake. It's not real, although the person doesn't know that, and it's a ridiculous meal assessment. Ridiculous means it's just not logical at all. It's silly. How could you possibly believe that? That's ridiculous. People used to suggest that. Are you serious? The sun is actually the center of the solar system. That's ridiculous. That's outrageous. How could you expect me to believe that? This is a meal assessment. An assessment means you kind of look at the thing and you make some conclusions. You evaluate that thing, and again, you make some conclusions.
Yeah, to assess something, you want to kind of check it out and then come to a conclusion. If you get in the way of something, you kind of are interrupting or obstructing somebody from doing what they want. So really, in essence, this sentence means the producers want to see if that person's desire for a reward and to avoid conflict is actually greater than the desire just to be left alone and eat a meal. So it's going to be funny to see what happens when this fake food inspector starts annoying or getting in the way of somebody having their dinner. Right now, guys, we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher, and then we'll be back to continue talking about what happens in this crazy situation.
Hello everyone, my name is Tina. 我们首先来看到今天文章第一段的第一个句子提到 In the 1960s, Stanley Milgram famously showed that under the right circumstances, people have a high tendency to obey authority, even when doing so causes harm to others.在60年代呢，有一位称为 Stanley Milgram， 他就呢众所周知的 famously 证明了呢，在某些适当的情况底下，人们呢会倾向服从权威。我们先来看一下在这里的 under the right circumstances， 也就是指的呢是在某些适当的情形跟状况之下，人们会高度的有这样的倾向。Have a tendency to do something， 也就是有怎么样子的倾向，人们会高度的倾向于 obey authority. Authority 就是权力的意思。尽管呢这么做有可能呢 causes harm to others， 可能对别人造成伤害，但是大家还是会倾向于这么做。在这里的 tendency 就可以用来当作名词，有倾向的意思。这一段的最后一句还提到 In fact, we've been conditioned from a young age to believe that obedience to authority brings us rewards and helps us avoid negative consequences. 那么事实上呢，我们在很年幼的时候就习惯了这样子的一个结果。Condition 当作动词，本来是有使适应的意思，延伸出来就被制约了。从很小的时候我们就被制约了，我们会相信呢 obedience to authority 对于权力权威的服从呢会带给我们什么好处？brings us rewards 带给我们奖励，除此之外还可以 helps us avoid negative consequences 还可以帮助我们去避免一些负面的效果。Consequence 当作名词，有结果后果的意思。举个例子来说 I'm willing to accept the consequences 代表着我愿意承担所有的后果。而在片语上来讲As a consequence 就等于 as a result 在英文里面呢就可以用来表示前因后果，中文解释成为因此所以的意思。第二段的第一句写着 In one episode of outrageous acts of psych, the producers set out to test if the desire for reward and conflict avoidance still carries weight when a fake food inspector's ridiculous meal assessment gets in the way of someone's dinner. 这个句子很长，首先提到呢，在这个节目当中其中的一集我们用 episode 这个字，这个呢制作人 set out to do something 就是着手进行什么事情呢？他去测试if 如果这样的欲望是不是 still carries weight， 要注意哦 the desire 它的动词是 carries weight， 表示这样的欲望仍然是具有影响力的。什么的欲望呢？ For reward and conflict avoidance 想要得到奖赏跟避免冲突的这样的欲望是不是仍然有影响力？什么时候呢？就是当呢他们安排了一个 fake food inspector 是荒谬假的食物稽查员，他进行了一些很荒谬的食物的餐点测试，而这样的检测呢其实是gets in the way of someone's dinner 就在某个人吃饭的时候他还妨碍到其他人，还用这样的情境来测试这样子的渴望是否还有影响力。在这里的 assessment 当作名词，也就是有测试跟评估的意思。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Now, we're talking about a certain experiment in this program, Outrageous Acts of Psych, where someone is eating, and then we've got this fake food inspector coming by and giving a ridiculous meal assessment. And is the person going to say, okay, I'll do what you say because you're an authority figure, I will answer all your questions? Or is this person going to have enough of this and realize this is just a bunch of nonsense? Would you get out of here? I want to finish my meal. So, yes, how far do we let this go on when we think that that person is really conducting some kind of meal assessment? Well, the hidden camera captures the food inspector first asking whether one's diner's sausage is long enough. So, again, we've got a hidden camera. The person eating the food doesn't know the camera's there. Then this fake food inspector comes over and then asks the diner, the person eating, if their sausage is long enough, or asking them whether it's long enough. Whether here just means if. It's the same meaning.
Yeah, so So the diner is taken aback. If you're taken aback by something, you're kind of shocked, kind of surprised. What? Taken aback by the question. It's kind of a crazy question. Is your sausage long enough? Well, I would expect someone perhaps to ask me if it tastes good, but is it long enough? What? I've never actually measured sausages. So they're kind of surprised by the question, which is what taken aback means. But the woman, she decides to go along with the inspector's request to measure the sausage. If you go along with something, you agree to whatever somebody wants to do. Oh, sure, you can measure the sausage on my plate. Actually, the woman probably just wants to be left alone and to eat. But here's this inspector who looks like he has some authority. He's in a position of authority. And as we talked about earlier, most of us kind of try to obey people who have some authority over us. We know that the inspector is fake, though. He's not a real food inspector. So the inspector does go ahead and makes an examination or takes an exam of the woman's sausage, and it just gets more and more ridiculous, absurd, crazy. And because of this, her body language and facial expressions make it clear that she's uncomfortable. That's why these hidden candid camera videos are funny. It's just watching people's expressions when they're going through something that's stupid or ridiculous, and they don't want to offend the person, who's asking them questions, or they don't want to offend this fake food inspector. But you can see from their facial expressions that they think it's kind of silly. Your facial expressions are what you do with your face to communicate your feelings, and sometimes those facial expressions are pretty funny themselves as you look at people. But some people don't, or they try to keep their faces blank. They don't want people knowing how they're feeling. Others, they can't really control their facial expressions very, very well.
It's kind of all part of nonverbal communication, your body language. Are you making nervous gestures with your hands? Are you fidgeting with your fingers, for example? Are you changing position in your seat all the time? Do you put your hand on your face to cover your mouth and stuff like that?
Do you blush?
Do you blush, etc.?
If you're embarrassed, yeah.
Indeed, that's all part of body language. And again, these facial expressions, maybe you don't mean to have those facial expressions, but you're making those gestures anyway. Maybe you're blinking your eyes, for example, when you're lying or something. So, yes, indeed, the body language and the facial expressions make everyone notice that she is uncomfortable with this situation, but nevertheless, still, she continues to tolerate the inspector even when he takes a bite of her sausage to prove that it tastes short. How can sausage actually taste short? Or taste too long, who knows? But in any case, she tolerates the inspector because I guess he's got some kind of uniform on and probably a name tag on that says that he or she is an inspector. So she tolerates him. To tolerate means that you put up with something or someone. You just allow that thing to continue even though it kind of annoys you, even though it makes you uncomfortable. So, yes, indeed, if you have a coworker in the office that you find annoying, you have to tolerate that person. You have to put up with that person. Otherwise, you're going to have arguments all the time and you're going to have to quit and stuff like that. You just need to accept the situation.
Well, although the prank itself is silly, and it is, it illustrates or shows or depicts or portrays the extremes people will go to in order to obey commands in the face of authority. So when confronted or having to deal with authority, this is something that someone might do. When you go to extremes, it means you're doing something that's really exceptional, very unusual, not something that usually happens. It's pretty crazy. But people will go to extremes just to obey commands from authority figures. Researchers believe there are several factors for this, or several reasons for this. One being the unwillingness to cause offense. If you cause offense, you offend somebody, you make somebody upset by doing something. You can be offensive by using bad language or calling people names. And so if you cause offense, you're upsetting somebody in some way. And people really don't want to offend people, typically. So they'll go to these extremes just to avoid avoid offending people. It's funny.
It is funny. So researchers again believe there are several factors for this. There are some reasons why we do this. And another reason why we do these things is that we've learned over time to treat commands from authority figures as routine, and therefore we hesitate to question them. So over time, every time an authority figure tells us what to do, well, we think of it as routine. It's something that happens all the time. And we always obey them, so we hesitate to question those commands. We always think that they're commanding us or telling us what to do. So we hesitate to question them. In other words, we just don't want to question them. Whatever you're saying is true, and if you hesitate, that means you pause too long and you allow something bad to happen. I hesitated to shoot the lion when it was running after me, and therefore it attacked me and I was severely injured. I paused too long. So basically, we just don't question them. When somebody tells us what to do, if they're an authority figure, we just say, okay, I'll do it because I always obey you.
So for more wacky pranks like these, you got to check out the show. It's called Outrageous Acts of Psych on Discovery this October. If it's wacky, it's funny, it's amusing, it's kind of strange, maybe odd, peculiar, but it's funny. So right now, we're going to listen one more time to our Chinese teacher.
在第二段中间提到了这个 inspector 所做的事情实在是非常的荒谬。第二段的最后一句Nevertheless, she continues to tolerate the inspector, even when he takes a bite of her sausage to prove that it tastes short. 这真的是蛮夸张好笑的。然而啊，这个 she 就是代表用晚餐的那位女士呢，还是继续的忍受这个食物稽查员的荒谬行为。To tolerate 就是去容忍、宽容的意思。I cannot tolerate your bad manners 指的呢是我没有办法再容忍你的无理行为了。但是这位女士呢依然去容忍这个荒谬的行为 even when 甚至啊当这个食物稽查员呢还咬了一口她的食物来证明这个东西吃起来啊 it tastes short 居然吃起来很短，这实在是太荒谬了，但是她还是继续的容忍这个稽查员。接着我们来看到第三段的第一个句子 Although the prank itself is silly, it illustrates the extremes people will go to in order to obey commands in the face of authority. 这里的 prank 指的呢就是恶作剧，当然你会觉得整个恶作剧本身就很愚蠢，可是它却说明 illustrate 是有举例说明的意思，说明了呢其实人们会愿意走极端。要注意哦The extremes 后面有个形容词子句 People will go to extremes 就是有走极端的意思，人们愿意走极端也要服从这些权威。OK， 以上呢就是我们针对这个街头心理实验所做的说明，谢谢大家的收听。
That's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And hey, check out this program on Discovery Channel, Outrageous Acts of Psych. It sounds pretty entertaining. I'm going to check it out myself. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.